This is the story of a con artist. The tale of a swindler and his scams is always fascinating to hear. Welcome to Simple Spoken English. In the middle of the San Francisco Bay in America lies a small island with a prison called Alcatraz, considered the world's most high-security and notorious jail. One day, the world's biggest con artist stepped into it. He was arrested for running a counterfeit banknote racket that had shaken the entire American economy. But for this con artist, that was just a small game. People said that he was sent to prison, but no law had the courage to imprison his cunning mind. He had conned the entire system. This is the story of Victor Lustig, the same man who sold the Eiffel Tower not once, but twice. The same Eiffel Tower that millions of people visit in Paris every year. Victor's cons will blow your mind. A petty pickpocket who became a global mastermind that everyone would remember. On January 4, 1890, in a small town called Hostinay in Central Europe, a boy was born named Robert V. Miller. This was Victor Lustig's real name. His family belonged to the upper middle class. His father was a mayor. His childhood was ordinary but not simple at all. Discipline and education were highly valued in his family. That's why Victor received a good education in his childhood. He was good at math and had a very sharp mind. He spoke in such a way that he could convince anyone of anything, even on their first meeting. And no matter how big the difficulty, he could always get out of it just by his words. But he understood very early in life that if he wanted to become big, he would have to break the rules. He had to move forward at all costs, no matter what he had to do. At the age of 19, he left home and went to Paris. The year was 1909. He started studying at the University of Paris, but he spent more time on gambling games like poker, bridge, and billiards than in the classroom. He was always thinking of something new, not to do good work, but to find new ways to con people. Victor learned several languages: German, English, French, Hungarian, and Czech, among others. If he had wanted to become a businessman, he would have been very successful. But that's not what he wanted. He wanted to get rich quickly, and he knew that education wasn't going to get him there. So he dropped out of school and started committing small crimes in Europe. He had to practice for what he wanted to do later in life. He had learned the languages. His personality was amazing, and he was a great talker. Anyone who came into contact with him couldn't help but be impressed. 1914, World War I had begun. Europe was in turmoil. Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire were on one side, while Britain, France, Russia, and later America were on the other. This war, which lasted for 4 years, drenched Europe in blood. Millions of soldiers were killed, cities were ruined, and ordinary people were forced to live in hunger and fear. But while ordinary people were being devastated, Victor saw this as an opportunity. When countries are embroiled in war, laws become weak. Government offices are focused elsewhere. The public is restless. At that time, making fake identity cards had become easy. Due to the war, many people were fleeing their countries. Passport and visa checks had become lax. Rich people wanted to move their money to a safe place or put it in a safe investment scheme. Victor understood all this very well, and then he started carrying out big cons. The Razor Book Scheme. Victor added Count before his name and became Count Victor Lustig. Count means a nobleman, landowner, or nawab. He stayed in high-end hotels, wore expensive suits, and spoke English in such a way that even real rich people would be deceived. His favorite con was the Razor Book Scheme. He would tell people that he had a book in which the future rates of the stock market were written in advance. He would show businessmen his book, which contained the names of many companies and the future rates of their shares. If a company's share was $2 today, the details of what its rate would be in 1 or 3 months were in his book. After this, he would meet with businessmen and show them his book, explaining how he was making people a huge profit in a short time by investing their money in the stock market. He would take money from some businessmen and invest it in small companies, and after a few days, he would return the money with double the profit. In fact, Victor didn't invest anywhere. Instead, he kept the money himself in the name of investment and gave the businessmen fake receipts as proof of investment. In this way, the businessmen would trust him, and when some big businessmen gave him a lot of money for a big investment to earn a big profit, he would disappear with the money as if he had never existed. After this came his next masterstroke, the money box scam, also known as the Romanian box scam. Victor had a small wooden box made with 2 slots. One slot was for keeping banknotes, and the other was for printing paper. He would tell the person that this machine could copy real banknotes, but it took 6 hours to copy one note because its technology was very high-end, and the biggest thing was that this machine could copy the currency of any country. The mahogany box was about the size of a steamer trunk, the kind of trunk that people often carried with them during travel in the past. The machine also had dummy levers. For show, Victor would put a real $1 note into the machine, start it, and after 6 hours, the same real note would come out. In fact, 2 or 3 real notes were already hidden inside the box. Victor would even take that note to the bank, so that the bank could check and confirm that the note was real. Now, how could a real note come out as fake? Whoever Victor gave a demo of the machine to would think, "Wow, this is amazing." They would immediately be ready to give millions, and as soon as he got the money, Victor would catch the next train to another station. In one such con, he even fooled a French police officer. By the time the officer realized he had been conned, Victor had already left the country. His name was in every city in Europe. Sometimes Count Lustig, sometimes Professor Lustig, and sometimes Sir Lustig. He was known by about 45 different names and used different passports. He would travel to many countries in Europe under new names and new identities, conning people and then disappearing from there. For the police, he was a puzzle, and for the common man, an interesting story. In that decade, the world was in great turmoil. Rich people were worried. There was recession in some places, dictatorship in others, and the rumblings of war somewhere else. Victor Lustig, who had now become the king of the con world, took advantage of this fear. Victor would sometimes present himself as an officer from a European bank, and sometimes as an ambassador on a secret international mission. His dress, his gait, and his English were so regal that even big businessmen would become like wet cats in front of him. He would tell the rich that he had an investment scheme that was hidden from the government's eyes. Secret foreign bonds, no tax, no questions, and triple the profit. For these bonds, he himself would make fake papers, seals, and government stamps. Everything looked so real that people would just close their eyes and give him money. Victor would say that a government was about to fall in a European country, and he knew all this through his internal network. He would tell people that there were some individuals who wanted to secretly sell their properties because they were afraid in their own country, and in this way, he would prepare fake documents and maps for fake property deals. The property's location, map, government stamp, everything looked real. He would scare people and also tempt them with greed. He would say that this deal was only for today, that many people were ready to buy it, and that they might regret it tomorrow if they didn't act now. People would think that if it was a lie, it was very cleverly crafted. But if it was true, then they would become millionaires. As soon as he took the money from people, there would be no trace of him, no receipt, no phone number, no address. The conned people would just sit there holding their heads. Victor was not just a con artist, he was a great artist. When he was living in cities like Paris and Vienna, he gained a lot of knowledge about music and paintings. He could play the piano, and he would talk about opera as if he were part of a royal family. Opera is a classical music show in Europe, where people come on stage and act. It is considered a very high-class performance, and rich people consider it a symbol of culture and status. Victor used this to trap people in his web. He would invite a rich person saying, "Tonight there's a royal opera performance and I have VIP passes. Let's go, you'll love it." Then he would wear stylish clothes and go to the opera with his victim. He would create such an atmosphere that the other person would consider him a very cultured and genuine person. Sometimes he would present himself as an art dealer, someone who buys and sells expensive paintings, and sometimes he would say that he was a member of the Royal Music Council, an organization that supports music and art, and whose name alone would impress people. In reality, he had no connection to it. But his way of speaking was such that people never doubted him. He would get many famous paintings duplicated and then sell them as originals at very high prices. Sometimes, to sell a painting, he would tell people that it was a very secret deal because it was a very old painting meant for a museum, and this was their last chance. The other person would think, why would such a classy, educated, and cultured person lie? And with that trust, Victor would rob them of everything. Music. Victor Lustig's life on the transatlantic liners of the Atlantic Ocean was quite interesting. These ships traveled between France and America and were filled with wealthy passengers, including businessmen, artists, politicians, and sometimes members of noble families. Victor would travel on these ships, and with his demeanor and intelligent conversations, he would attract people to him. He was an extremely clever and charismatic person. As soon as a rich businessman or passenger caught his eye, he would approach them, presenting himself as a music producer or a very big investor. Gradually, he would show them the dream of investing in a Broadway show that never actually existed. Broadway shows are large and expensive musical productions that take place in the Broadway area of New York. These shows are famous all over the world, and their tickets are very expensive. Victor pretended to be the producer of a big music show that was soon to be on Broadway and convinced investors to give him money. This was entirely a fake scheme that Victor had prepared to fool his victims. With his demeanor, his clothes, and his way of speaking, he created the image of a trustworthy and influential person. He would have deep conversations with rich people and convince them that their money would be invested in the right place. And when people gave him money, Victor would leave the ship as soon as it reached the next port. Such was the magic in his words that once someone fell for his talk, they would foolishly consider themselves smart. The code-breaking machine. One of Victor's most dangerous cons was the code-breaking machine. For this, Victor chose a German businessman who had come to France tired of the war. Victor told him that he had a German code-breaking machine that could decode secret war messages. The businessman thought it was a treasure trove. Now it was time to demonstrate the machine, and for that, Victor prepared a grand setup. To make the machine, he took a small briefcase with wires, switches, buttons, blinking lights, and a small roller attached to it. Looking at it, it seemed like a high-tech military gadget. Victor had already prepared a coded message. Then he hid the decoded version of that code in a slip and fitted it inside the machine. This decoded slip was on a roll hidden inside the machine, in the exact position from where it would come out to show. Victor put the paper into the machine and then switched on some switches. Some lights blinked, and some sound came from inside as if the machine was processing the message, and after a while, a slip came out of the machine with the decoded message. Victor said, "See, this was the German's secret radio code. Now do you understand the power of this machine?" Victor said that this machine could only catch German messages and its price was in the millions. "But I will give it to you at a cheap price." Without thinking twice, the businessman gave Victor 50,000 francs and left with the machine. But after a few weeks, he realized that he had been conned. This was another of Victor's masterstrokes. 1925, the Eiffel Tower. This story is not only his masterpiece of conning, but it also brought his cunning, his courage, and his unique methods to the world's attention. At that time, the Eiffel Tower was the biggest symbol of Paris, but its maintenance was very expensive. The question often arose whether it should be torn down. One day, Victor came across a news report that the condition of the Eiffel Tower was very bad and its maintenance was costing a lot. Reading this news sparked a new and unique conning plan in Victor's mind. Victor took advantage of this opportunity, and for this, He hired a forger who could create some fake government documents for him. When everything was ready, he invited some scrap metal dealers to a very expensive hotel and introduced himself as a very high-ranking officer of the Paris government. In that meeting, he told the dealers that the maintenance of the Eiffel Tower had become very expensive for the city, and the government had now decided to sell it for scrap. He said it was a very secret matter, and the government did not want to make it public. But at the same time, the government wanted the Eiffel Tower to be bought by someone who was actually honest and who would not tell anyone about this deal. During the meeting, Victor observed all the buyers very carefully. He tried to understand who was most likely to fall for his trap. There, he saw a man named André Poisson, who wanted to establish his place in the Paris business circle. But he knew that many dealers had come to buy the Eiffel Tower, and he might not get the deal. Victor saw him, and after talking to him, he understood that it would be right to carry out this fraud with him. After that, he called André for a personal meeting and told him, "I am a corrupt government officer. My salary is so low that I cannot live the kind of life I want. But I want a dealer to buy this who is honest and who can also give me some money for it." This is exactly what André wanted, because he wanted to establish his identity in society. For this, he gave Victor a large sum as a bribe, 70,000 francs. And that was it. This was Victor's plan all along. As soon as he got the money, he quietly fled Paris. He was sure that when André realized he had been conned, he would definitely not go to the police, and his thinking turned out to be correct. Victor had left Paris and gone to Austria. But for many days, he did not see any news in the newspaper mentioning this con. So he thought, why not do the same con again? And with this thought, he returned to Paris. But when he was trying to con the dealers again, somehow the police got wind of it, and Victor had to flee Paris for America immediately. Victor's conning journey in America was just as thrilling and mysterious as it was in Europe. It's not like Victor was only involved in one fraud or scam at a time. He kept himself involved in many kinds of frauds and scams. The commercial paper scam was a game of trust. At that time, there were many banks and businessmen in America who were ready to invest money in international investment and business deals. People who came from Europe were considered very rich and trustworthy. Victor took advantage of this mindset, but not just cleverly, by planning very deeply. Like every scam, he would arrive in a big city like New York, Chicago, or Texas, and stay in the big hotels there. Like every scam, his clothes, watch, suitcase, and even his personal visiting card were all very real and impressive. The victim would not approach Victor himself for the first time. Victor would meet him in a business club or a hotel lobby. He would stay in such hotels where rich businessmen, bankers, and real estate dealers would come and go. Victor would say hi and start the conversation with a seasonal issue or the economy of Europe and America. With his words and his style, he would prove himself to be a real investor. He would meet people several times, have lunch with them, and also talk about his European partners. Sometimes he would bring another man with him and introduce him as his associate, who would sometimes play the role of a German banker or a French accountant so that the whole story seemed real. He would tell people that he had some commercial papers that he wanted to redeem in America itself, and for this, he was looking for a trustworthy bank or an agent. He would show the businessman or the bank officer some documents that contained investment papers in foreign currency. Those papers looked so real that even bank verification officers would be deceived many times. Victor would tell those people that he was giving them these papers at a 5% discount. You deposit it in your bank. The profit is yours. Sometimes Victor would give them a small transaction paper and tell them, you deposit this, you will get the result, and then we will do a big transaction. Sometimes he would even bribe bank officers to get his documents approved, so that the other person would have complete trust in him. When his demo was so successful, the other person would buy papers worth millions of dollars from him. This is exactly what Victor was waiting for. As soon as he got the money, he would catch the next flight or train to another city or country. Victor did this scam in America, not in just one city or country, but in dozens of cities. His only principle was that people cannot be fooled, but they can be shown greed so that they themselves become fools. If you have noticed by now, you would know that he had a script for every scam. He would rehearse for hours before every meeting for every scam, so that his acting, his dialogues, background, timing, everything looked perfect. The year 1930, when a storm of forgery hit America, he created such a network of printing fake dollar bills in America that it gradually had a very bad effect on the entire country's economy. Victor had a special printing press called the Ramen No Press that printed $100 bills so cleanly that it was very difficult to distinguish between real and fake. These counterfeit notes spread throughout America in thousands, and the government was in shock. Even the Federal Reserve suspected an inside leak. In 1930, Victor partnered with two people from Nebraska, pharmacist William Wards and Tom Shaw. Wards and Shaw prepared the plates for printing counterfeit notes, while Victor created a network of distributors to ensure the notes were distributed properly, and no one would get information about him. In this way, he circulated thousands of dollars in counterfeit notes in America every month. This continued for the next 5 years. However, the growing impact of these counterfeit notes gradually drew the attention of the FBI. Year 1933, America's most dangerous gangster, Al Capone, also fell for Victor's trick. When the Great Depression hit, Victor devised a master plan to outsmart Al Capone. He asked Capone to deposit a sum of $10,000 into an investment scheme, but after 2 months, he returned all the money to Capone. He explained that his investment scheme didn't work out, and the people he wanted to bring into the scheme weren't ready. Therefore, he had to shut down the scheme. Capone didn't gain anything from this, but he definitely thought that Victor was a very honest person. And after that, Victor told Capone that the hard work he had done in 2 months to invest in this scheme had put him in a bit of a difficult situation, and he needed some money to get out of it. Capone was pleased with his honesty and gave Victor $5,000. In fact, this was Victor's plan all along. He didn't want Capone's $10,000. He only needed the $5,000. At the same time, he needed to gain a place in the underworld, and his plan worked. Capone made him a member of his gang. Year 1935, the FBI finally found some evidence, and on May 12, 1935, Victor was arrested in New York. When the police searched his room, they found a pile of counterfeit notes, printing plates, and fake passports from all over the world. Victor's trial began, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. For the FBI, this was their biggest success, and after this, Victor was sent to Alcatraz, one of the world's most notorious prisons.